Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. We are going to have tonight. We're going to be speaking with Stephen Knapp about the ancient wisdom of the Hindu Vedas. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. But please do check out my brand new webpage, brand spanking new. It is www.medical-intuitives, that's with an S.com, medical-intuitives.com, where you can find out about all the services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy medicine, healings, and intuitive counseling. So, you know, if you're in a crossroads in your life or you have a health-related issue that has come up and you need some clarity or clarification on, please drop me a note, give me a call, and we'll get an appointment set up for you. If you've missed an episode of Just Energy Radio, you can always check out our website, www.justenergyradio.com. We have over 7 years, 7 years of show archives on that page. Or you can go to our YouTube channel, that's Just Energy Radio on YouTube. If you go to the webpage, sign up for our newsletter to keep you informed of everything that's coming up on the show. And if you do go to the YouTube channel, please do subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate your ongoing support. You just don't know how much. A couple of quick announcements to make. March 21st, Glen Rose, Texas is Weird Fest, Texas. So if you are in the Texas area, some of the best speakers in cryptozoology, paranormal stuff, psychic stuff, all of that really cool stuff that you like on the show are going to be speaking there. That's March 21st, Glen Rose, Texas. Saturday, April 12th is the History, Haunts, and Legends Conference in spooky Jefferson, Texas, one of my favorite places to be. I'll be there speaking, doing readings all day, so if you wanted to have a reading from me, do check it out. On the 13th, yes, I'll be jet-setting over to Pensacola, Florida, to speak. The information about that event is on my website, and all these events are on my website, the Just Energy Radio one, the soulhealer.com one. And then April 26th is the Tyler Paranormal Conference in Tyler, Texas. It's going to be another great event, has a lot of excellent speakers talking about all kinds of paranormal and alternative thought type topics. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest tonight, Stephen Knapp, and get him on the air. Stephen Knapp grew up in a Christian family, during which time he seriously studied the Bible to understand its teachings. In his late teenage years, however, he sought answers to questions not easily explained in Christian theology. So he began to search through other religions and philosophies from around the world and started to find answers which he had been looking for. Stephen has written numerous books, and when I say numerous, he's written a lot of books, on various aspects of spiritual tradition of India. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio. His website is stephenknapp.info or stephen-knapp.com. Stephen Knapp. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for inviting me on, and look forward to another fun-filled conversation like we had the last time.
Well, you were on a different show.
Right.
So this is kind of new to this group of listeners.
Excellent.
That's what makes it be so exciting. So to start off, on my show, I have a definite formula. And if I have a person on that hasn't been on the show before, I just like to give a little bit of history, where you came from. You said that you became discontented with Christianity. How did this whole transformation start? What was going on inside of you that you decided to kind of look outside the box?
Well, it was a pretty good opportunity at the time because, when I was like 14 years old, the Beatles came to America, and if you followed the Beatles, you kind of followed them into the transcendental meditation thing. And but at the same time, I'd been a musician for a number of years, and I was so wrapped up in it, I just thought, something, I got to put my guitar down and really find out why am I even here? Why am I in this world? Where am I going? What's the point of it? And so, at the time, I read the Bible from cover to cover, just like you might say a novel or something. But and that took me about a year to do it. But I was determined to understand, since I was already born and raised a Christian, due to my mother primarily. And okay, let's take a really serious look at it. And it really didn't give me the kind of deep spirituality that I was looking for. So motivated by my surroundings and having been a musician and stuff like that, you're a little more avant-garde, you might say. And so I started to look around. But the thing of it was, I didn't know where to look. So I just looked at everything. I looked into Judaism, the I Ching, the Oriental philosophies, read most of the Quran, actually, and many of the Buddhist scriptures. And, whatever was there, I took a look at it until I started getting into the Eastern teachings of India, the mysticism and things like that. Then finally I reached a point where a friend of mine had this brochure, and he pointed out the Bhagavad Gita, which is the ancient classic text that many people know about. And he said, this is kind of like the Indian Bible. And I'm going like, well, that's what I want to see, because I was really interested in seeing what other cultures had for their concept of God, who and what we are, and, whatever. And so I got that, and it was like the last piece of the puzzle I was putting together. Because when you do all this comparative research, and I didn't do it in an academic environment, and I think in some ways it was better for me not to have done it in an academic environment, because you're more self-motivated, you learn things in a more free-form manner. And so you start putting all these pieces of the puzzle together. You can see how they're all related. They're all connected. And they all have portions of this inner spiritual truth that you're looking for. But when I got the Bhagavad Gita, it was like the last piece of the puzzle where, it really made a lot of sense to me. It really talked about, one's spiritual identity, the aspect of the soul, the size and nature of it, who or what is God, what your connection is with both the world and the divine, and all this information that I had been looking for so long and never could find before. So I just had to, all I wanted was more. So then I started studying the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras, the Puranas, and whatever else I could get my hands on. And from there, it just kept developing, and I kept getting more and more into it. And finally, then I joined the ashram. There was a Hare Krishna temple in Denver, Colorado, which I was attracted to. So I joined the ashram and continued my research, continued learning how to do rituals and things like that within the temple itself. And then finally I reached a point in, 1986, I think, 1985 or 86, where I started writing my own books, because at the time I was thinking that, there's a lot of people out there that would like this kind of information, but they don't have time to read like 20 volumes of books like I did, or even more books than that. And so then I started, writing like summaries of it. And, and that lasted for, a few years. I started writing one book, then another book, and then oddly enough, I got a call from this company called Amazon.com, and I didn't even know what Amazon was. This was, quite a few years ago, but they asked, is this book available? And I'm going like, yeah, I'm publishing it, because I formed my own publishing company when I did it. So that was a great learning experience for me, is how to, form your own publishing company, write your books, design your books, format them, and then also publish the books as well. Of course, there's many better ways of publishing today than there was back then. But so once Amazon got a hold of it, then I started to realize this is much bigger than I expected. Then there was Baker and Taylor, which is a huge distributing company, mostly to college stores, universities, and things like that. Then they got a hold of the books and started ordering regular copies, and so it kind of developed into a cottage industry. And so then combining that with my continued studies of Eastern philosophy, my continued travels in India, and I've been all over India. In fact, when I talk to the Indians, they say, well, I've seen more of their country than they have. And so it just kept developing into deeper levels of realization, deeper levels of expression, and a wider venue of how to, I should say, spread this kind of knowledge for those people that are just looking at it for the first time or getting into it. And basically trying to take a very lofty philosophy and simplify it so that basically anybody can understand it and get a good grasp of it quickly, as opposed to, writing or having them read books that sometimes they can't even understand very well because either of the language or how it's presented, or it's too much, I should say, with an Indian flavor that it just goes over their heads, and then they lose interest. Because my formula is, if a person cannot understand what he reads, he will certainly not be able to remember it. And if he can't remember it, he'll never apply it to his life. If he can't apply it to his life, then basically, what's the point? You've missed your mark. So the whole point of it is try to write something in a way where people can understand it, see it, and then be able to utilize it. Otherwise, like I say, you've kind of missed your mark. And fortunately, I've had the good results in that sense that many people have written me, even Indians actually, which was something I never expected. I never expected that Indians themselves would write back to me and say that, they've learned more from me than they have even their own Brahmin family or something like that. So even doing lecture tours throughout India was something that I had never planned for, never envisioned, until one day this group called me over and said, we'll pay your way, you come and speak. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just, speak a few times and then we'll see what they're up to and stuff. And meanwhile, I didn't even know that they had a tour, a lecture tour, where I spoke once or twice each and every day I was over there. So that was very unique. And so I've been working in this way ever since, and doesn't look like I'm going to slow down anytime soon.
When you said you've read the Bible, and to me, there's a huge difference between what's in the Old Testament and the New Testament, but I'll just say the Bible in general. How would you compare the teachings that are in them to, say, the Vedas or, say, the Puranas?
Well, the Bible is a great book for wisdom, moralistic principles, but it doesn't really deal that much with the deeper principles of spiritual and self-realization. And that's a big difference, because in the Puranas themselves, there's many stories and many levels of wisdom as well. But the idea is to promote not only the knowledge, but also the methodology by which you can attain the same vision of the rishis or the seers. And so the whole idea with the Puranas is to rise above basic conventional religion, not that its ultimate purpose, but it automatically raises you above conventional religion to the area where you can really begin to see and perceive by direct perception your spiritual identity. I mean, that's the whole point. And so it's a big difference. It's a big, so that eventually you can see the spiritual realm, the spiritual dimension, you might say, everywhere you look, as opposed to seeing it only in amongst humans or your own group or your own ethnic culture or whatever. You begin to see it throughout the whole world, amongst all species, amongst all dimensions. So it's in that way, it's very, very different.
One of the things, I mean, when you read Hindu literature, they throw out a lot of words that you either have to look them up to figure out what they're talking about, or even if you know what the word means, the way that they utilize it in the Western world doesn't make any sense. You know, and one of those words in particular, or concepts, is that this world is an illusion. And I was wondering if you could address that concept, because I think many people have heard that saying, and you just look at the person saying it going, oh, okay, you know, it seems pretty real to me.
Yeah. Well, 2 points. First of all, that's one of the reasons why I write the books that I do, is so that, you know, you won't stumble along these different words and the way they're used many times in Indian-oriented texts, because some of these early books would come from India, and you know, something is lost in the language, you know, in the translation, as they say, and so it's difficult. But the whole idea that the world is an illusion comes from many different areas, like the Upanishads, you know, Upanishadic knowledge, and the fact that it's an illusion simply refers to the fact that it's temporary. It's like a dream. So when you have a dream at night, from my point of view, that dream is real. But it's only affecting you as long as you don't wake up. Once you wake up, then you realize, oh, well, that was one level of reality. Now I'm in a different level of reality. And the same way, that's why when you have a spiritual awakening, when you begin to see your spiritual perception, your identity, your spiritual identity, then you begin to see that there's different levels of reality, and the temporary world, and that's why they call it an illusion. It's temporary. It's here today, gone tomorrow, whether it's things in your life or the world itself, or even the changes that take place. Like, you know, many people that, many of the older people in this country today say that the United States isn't anything like it used to be. Of course, that's a whole other topic, but the point of it is, even our bodies change with age. So our youth of being, say, 5 or 6 years old, that happened, but it's temporary. So now you look back on it as simply a memory. So whatever is temporary is considered part of the illusion, which means you should search for that which is not temporary, or that which is fixed or unchangeable. And that's one of the things that the Bhagavad Gita explains, is that the soul is what is ultimately unchangeable. It doesn't change, it doesn't wither, it doesn't dry up, it's not killed, you can't kill it. And so it's eternal. So that is the identity that you should strive to realize, as opposed to being a part of this temporary and ever-changing world in which we exist. It's there, it's here, but once again, it's an illusion because it's continually changing and always temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow.
There, you know, I kind of am involved in the ghost hunting world, and, you know, there's always the debates about what happens in the afterlife. And my question really isn't about the afterlife, but I would like to hear from your perspective, you know, when we die and obviously leave the physical body and our soul, you know, we have the transmigration of the soul. What part of us is left? You know, I believe, and I'll just share with I believe that there are major aspects of our personality that, you know, are part of that soul cluster. And so even in the afterlife, you know, if you're kind of a weirdo laughing person, you're going to be that way in the afterlife because that's who you are. And when you incarnate, you probably will have aspects of, that personality. I don't know another word to use, that come with you into your next life. Do you kind of get that same feeling, or do you have a different viewpoint of that?
No, you're right. The thing of it is, the Vedic concept is that when you leave, you leave the soul. The soul right now in these bodies, the soul is covered by the mind, intellect, false ego, and the gross material body. Now, the false ego is simply that concept that you are the body, which means there's two types of egos. There's one that's false ego, that I'm this material body, and there's the real ego, which I am. I am meaning that I am the eternal spirit soul. So when you leave the body, you leave the material vehicle behind, but with you, the life heirs go out of the body and take you to a different realm, which is still considered, you take your mind and your intellect with you. It changes, and of course, death will give you many different insights, but whatever your consciousness level is at the time of death, that is the consciousness which you take with you to the next realm. The next realm may be a subtle realm where you exist for some time, or you may come back into another material realm. You reincarnate. And in that case, you get a body which suitably, I guess you could say, it suitably accommodates whatever your consciousness you have at the time from your previous existence. And of course, you take along your karma. Your karma, of course, karma is whatever action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. So your karma dictates what kind of situation you will get according to your good or bad activities that you have to work out. So according to your interest, according to your personality, and according to your karma, you get the next position that is most suitable for you. And quite honestly, if you're a very jovial person in this life, chances are in your next life you'll take part of that personality with you. So you'll be also happy and jovial in the subtle realm, or you have things to work out. Maybe in your next life you have more serious things to work out, depending on what that karma dictates. So you may or may not be as jovial as you were, but still there's that aspect of your personality that you take with you. You don't change all that much. Basically, that's one of the reasons why it's expressed that in this particular lifetime, we need to develop ourselves in the way we want to as best we can, because it's at the time of death where we have that ultimate test of how spiritual we are, how material we are, or whatever, which then takes us to the next realm according to our consciousness. It's not like you die and suddenly you become self-realized, but you have to work on it.
Let me interrupt you on that point. So let's say you've had, I'm going to say a rough life, for kind of lack of better words. But, in your later part of life, you've really gone through a lot of changes. You've discovered yourself as spirit. You've done a lot of healing, self-healing, so that you have gotten rid of a lot of that trauma that you would end up taking with you into the next life. Is that part of us clearing our karma in this lifetime?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Ooh, I'm so smart sometimes.
Yeah, because usually a rough life means you're, working things out. You're working things out either from your past life, or you're working things out because you have things to learn and, lessons you have to undergo. So in that case, if you at least you get the message, then all karma, it really is good karma, because you're becoming a better person, you're becoming more spiritualized, you're losing the hang-ups that you might have had. So it's all upward. The universe is actually based on compassion. So the whole process of life itself is to, become better and better, as long as we work on that. course, here in Detroit, we hear a lot of stories about, and I suppose all over the world, really, but how people are involved in, crime and things like that. And, that's basically what you could call a misuse of the human form of life. And they'll definitely have lessons to learn in their next existence somewhere or another.
So is it you that told me this, or someone, I don't remember, that when you die and you're reincarnated that you can't go back to a lower form of life, so that you can't come back as like a bug or something like that?
Generally speaking, that's true.
But that wasn't you that told me that, okay. But it's being confirmed, thank God. I was told that, and I'm like, woo!
Yeah,
I don't have to be a bug.
Yeah, generally when you're a human being, you get caught up in humanistic activities, and you come back as a human being. Of course, at the other hand, if you're too much animalistic, if you're too much of a criminal, then as opposed to being a human and continuing that, your karma and the situation that you've created in this life will dictate that you do take a lower birth, because basically that's what animals do. Animals incur no karma. They have no karma that they accumulate. Animals simply work out their karma, whatever karma they have to undergo. So if a person is too much nonsense, then sometimes, yes, they do take an animal birth because of the situation they've created in this life.
So we have another reincarnation question. This is from Bill in New York. And the question is it more likely to reincarnate into your family tree, or is there some other determination onto which a body will be reborn?
You can in the future reincarnate into your same family tree, but that also depends on, your karma and your consciousness, what you deserve and what you want. If you want to, become, say, like established as a musician or something like that, and your family is not known for being very musical, then you may be born into a family that's more musically inclined, so that you can pursue that interest of yours. On the other hand, once again, if you, say, are born into a family of doctors, it may be your karma, you might say, that you can also have the best opportunity to become a good doctor because your family is doctors. So it can vary like that. According to your consciousness and what you deserve and what you want, that determines what your next life will be.
In many spiritual, I don't want to say spiritual traditions, because I don't know that this necessarily came out of a spiritual tradition, but there is the belief that we choose our parents, we choose the life we want to live, we choose the lessons that we want to learn. Is that same philosophy come out of the Hindu tradition? Yeah,
that's part of it. Oftentimes, there may be some, what you could say, choices you may make while in the subtle realm, where you have certain karmas to work out, certain lessons to undergo, and you'll, be given a choice. Well, this birth here, and sometimes you can even see your birth that you're going to take, what the future of it is. So in some ways, it's expected. You almost expect what's going to happen to you, at least in the subconsciousness, maybe not in the consciousness awareness of your physical being, but in your subconsciousness, you may know that there's certain lessons that you're going to undergo, and that's going to, give you the lessons you need, or work out the karma that you need to work out, and ultimately become a better person for it, whatever that case may be. So yeah, sometimes you take a choice. Okay, this birth will do everything I have to do to get through this and, progress afterwards, or progress through this particular birth in a particular way. And so yeah, that can be a part of it.
I just, when I hear people say that, I think, what was I thinking?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I say that all the time.
I think, God, I could have come back as my dog. Then I could lay on my, I could lay on my own desk. I could have somebody feed me every day. We'd would be okay.
You'd be okay, but, hopefully if you come back as a dog, you don't end up being a street dog in Sochi or
No, I said my
India.
dog. My dog.
Your dog.
Totally like pampered and.
Right. Well, he's a lucky dog then.
I'm going to go back to one of the things we were talking about was, the essence of who we are. And there's the whole concept of a soulmate. I know this is a little off topic here, but is that, because you hear people that will use that term, but I feel like they're using it because, they don't fight with the other person or there's this level of physical chemistry that's happening. But, when you describe the soul and our essence, it almost seems like that's where the connection really needs to be on a soul-to-soul level and not just, a chemistry level.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of times people say, oh, this is my soulmate because maybe they have the same interests, they get along so well, they feel a real camaraderie or a real closeness, whether it's through affection or just mutual activities. But oftentimes we see that sometimes the deepest and closest soulmates change in different directions, and then after a while they're no longer soulmates again. So how were they ever soulmates? The thing of it is, we come in contact with the people that are meant to give, oftentimes at least, we come in contact with the people that are meant to direct us in particular ways in life. And that relationship may be very deep, it may be, maybe not so deep or somewhat superficial, but sometimes they come in contact with us in order to guide us or kind of direct us in a particular way. And that in itself helps us unfold and progress in ways that maybe we wouldn't have if that person didn't come in our life. But yeah, a real soulmate means you relate to each other on a much deeper level than simply the emotional, mental, or mutual interest level. It really needs to be deeper than that. Otherwise, oftentimes, people come together, or it's like described in the Puranas that people come together like travelers at an inn. They come in for the night, they stay together, they may socialize, but in the next morning, their karma dictates that they take different routes to different destinations. And that's kind of the way it is in life in general.
Hear, hear. So we have another question in the chat room, and this is a pretty good one. It's from Dave, and I'm just going to read what it says. It says, if these teachings are true, after these thousands of years, why do things seem to be getting worse rather than better as far as humanity goes?
Well, there's a thing called the yugas. There's Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga is the shortest of the yugas, but it's also known to be ultimately the worst. And I don't really want to get into it too much, but if anybody's interested, they can read my book, The Vedic Prophecies, A New Look into the Future. And it's based on the Vedic prophecies for what the future holds. And this is the age when the atheist, the godless, and even the demonic become prominent on the face of the earth. And the changes that will take place especially deteriorate after the first 10,000 years of this Kali Yuga. Now, we've passed through 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, which is accepted to have started in 3102 BC. And there's a golden age within Kali Yuga. It's not Satya Yuga, but it's considered the golden age within Kali Yuga that lasts for 10,000 years. So we've got practically another, say, 9,000 and some years to go. But in this age, people do progress spiritually, but there is a polarization that is taking place. In other words, those who are evil, those who are selfish, become more and more selfish, and those who are spiritual become more and more spiritual. And because of this, there is a constant struggle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. But generally, Kali Yuga is the age when the godless become very prominent, and all I can say is if you think things are bad now, I tell you, you haven't seen anything yet. So that means we need to utilize whatever freedoms we have, whatever opportunities we have to become as spiritual as possible so that when things do get really rough, and we're not going to see the worst times in our lifetime, but in future generations, there will be a splitting, you might say, where those that are more spiritually inclined will begin to go up into the higher dimensions, where those that are more materially inclined will simply remain on this earthly level to deal with whatever consequences are taking place at the time. So it's basically predicted that the difficulties that we are seeing on this planet, whether it's through international relations, politics, intrigue, bad economies or whatever, these are just the, I should say, side effects of a misdirected aim of life, where people become more and more materialistic, more and more greedy, more and more selfish, as opposed to more and more spiritual, which includes more and more kindness, compassion, mercy, and consideration with others.
It makes it hard to imagine it getting worse than it is. I can imagine getting worse than it is, but the cycle, this period is so huge, and we're not even halfway through. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we haven't even hit the bottom of the barrel yet.
That's why I don't like to talk too much about it, because if you're talking about spiritual and uplifting things, then I don't want to get too negative. But for those people that are interested, they can read my book, The Vedic Prophecies, and take a deeper look into what the Vedas and the Vedic literature forecast to happen in the future of this Kali Yuga. And you're right, it's barely a fraction of this age has gone by, because it's predicted to last another 426,000 years. That's a pretty long time.
Speaking of the Kali Yuga, when the whole 2012, people were running around saying, oh, well, the Mayans say this, and in Hindu philosophy, they say that the cycle's ending too. Did you just kind of stay in the background, or were you kind of vocal about, no, not really?
Yeah, I was kind of vocal about it. I sent an article and I made a YouTube video about it, because quite honestly, when I was in Jaipur, India, we had a conference called Spirituality Beyond Religion. And in that conference, there was like representatives of 30 different cultures around the world that were continuing at a time before the monotheistic religions kind of blew them out of the water. And one of the representatives there was a Mayan elder. And he spoke a little bit about this prophecy that 2012, the Mayans say this, and he says, we don't say that. Who's saying that we, as Mayans, say that the world's going to end in 2012? This Western mental speculation that has produced this idea because they didn't read the Mayan calendar properly. He says, why didn't they come directly to us? And we could have told them what to say. But they've made this thing about 2012, the Mayans say that the world is going to end. And he said, I know that some of you are depending on this. Some of you are expecting the world to end at 2012. But I hope that you're not too disappointed when nothing happens. So this was from a Mayan elder himself. And of course, those of us that are aware of the Vedic prophecies, quite honestly, the Vedic prophecies are not time-oriented. They're consciousness-oriented, which means that it gives a blueprint, you might say, of what to expect when mankind starts acting like this or like that, or how far into Kali Yuga we are according to the symptoms of civilization. So if we wanted to, we could change the future by uplifting our consciousness. So it's up to us. What our future is basically up to us. I mean, the trend is naturally, according to the prophecies, is to get more and more wicked or evil or less spiritual. But at the same time, we can hold those influences and those effects off if we can socially raise the mass consciousness of humanity. It's basically up to us. But, the challenge is how to, try to spread that awareness of how to raise that consciousness.
When you survey, and I'm going to use religions around the world, as we move into this Kali Yuga, I mean, one of the things that, just listening to you talk, I kind of fear is that a lot of the ancient wisdom that does come out of India might be superseded or eradicated by Christian philosophy or even Muslim philosophy, because they're so loud and they're so vocal and they're so controlling.
Yeah, that is what's happening, actually, in many different levels. It's and that is also predicted. Its fact is that the Vedic prophecies themselves predict in about 10,000 years, basically all of its knowledge, all of its wisdom will cease to exist. You'll basically have only various moralistic principles, which themselves will be lost because people will stop believing or even being aware of a higher power. So you can see that happening right now. You can see it happening right now where people try to corrupt or even destroy some of this Vedic literature, or simply say, because I was in the Northeast. I was in the Northeast of India, which is Assam, Nagaland, Arunachala Pradesh, Sikkim, and many of the old cultures that are up there are disappearing. And the tribals up there, the people, which are very kind and very polite, very submissive people up there, they are aware that their culture is fading away very quickly because of the values that are based on Christianity. And the problem with that is that when I was in, say, Assam, there was villages where if a boy and girl were caught together, they would make them get married. Now, if a boy and girl are caught together, nothing happens, and abortion has increased tremendously up there, and where people would make their own rice liquor, they would call it rice beer, and they would do that themselves. Now there's a liquor shop on every corner, and alcoholism has gone through the roof because of these Western values, which is often connected with Western religion at the same time. And so you can see that the moralistic principles and the ways of the tribals in that area are simply, ceasing to exist because of what's happening and the conversion that's going on. And even when I was up there, one of the things that they were told is that if you wanted to be like the United States and be progressive, you have to convert to Christianity, because that's the only way you're going to make any progress. And then people like me came through, and we're saying, no, that's not the case at all. We have many people from India and around the world that are keeping their own culture in America and still contributing to the progress, whether it's economic or technology or whatever, continuing to help the United States progress in a forward manner, even though they've continued to follow their own traditions. And for some people up there, this was the first time they ever heard that. So it was interesting for me to go up there and tell them, no, you keep your culture. You have a valuable culture. Keep your wisdom. Keep your traditions. And don't be thinking that the only way you're going to be able to make any progress is by converting over to some other religion. Because believe me, in America, we've got all kinds of problems where the particular religion you're being tempted to convert to hasn't helped at all, except, maybe in the most basic way.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and it seems like, Christianity, especially a lot of fundamentalist Christians are, all right, no nasty cards and letters from anybody, please. A lot of their premises, about the Antichrist and the rapture and all of this stuff But when you look at how things are being played out, and this is the part that I don't want the cards and letters about, it almost seems like the Christian tradition is the Antichrist. Ooh. Did I say that out loud, Stephen?
Yeah, I think you did. But on the other hand, I just recorded a video that I put on YouTube just the other day that talks about, the need for spirituality, but also why many of the barriers that are between us is because of religion. So how do we overcome that? That's the thing. Many of the problems, even, let's face it, many of the wars, many of the differences between us are not because of our race or ethnicity, but it's because of the religion itself that we subscribe to. So that's part of the difficulty that we have in just getting along, is sometimes these religions are so unacceptable towards anything outside their own clan.
And that's the part that's such a joke. I'm going to tell a true story. So my brother and sister-in-law, who've never listened to my show because I'm totally burning in hell. Anyway, they, well, actually, he just became a minister, but they are apocalyptic. Yeah, I think that would be the correct word. Mm-hmm. But they had a Bible study thing that they had at their house. And so my mom would go to their Bible study. My mom's Catholic, but it was my brother and his wife. She went to their Bible study. And my sister-in-law actually said to me, well, her beliefs are wrong. And I looked at her and I said, excuse me, but don't you both believe in the same Jesus? I mean, I just can't even wrap my mind around how if you believe in Jesus, you can't believe in that Jesus. You have to believe in my Jesus because my Jesus is better than your Jesus. But I only thought there was one Jesus, so I don't know how they can subdivide them.
Hey, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. In fact, one time I was traveling through Kashmir, India, which is known for being primarily Muslim. And there's two primary sects within Islam, which is the Sunnis and the Shias. And Kashmir is primarily Sunnis. And this one Shia Muslim was riding on the bus that I was on, naturally with a bunch of other Sunnis, and he was scared for his life. So he came to me and he was talking about it, how he had been persecuted and he's trying to go back into Pakistan and he's got to go through Kashmir, and he was afraid he wasn't going to make it because, he was afraid that people would find out that he's Shia and all these Sunnis would kill him. So Islam, for example, has around 72 different sects within its religion. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they say that once the world is completely Islamic, then there will be peace. But whenever I've seen this, whenever the Muslims don't have some non-Muslim to pick on or try to persecute, they fight amongst each other. So how can there be peace when the world becomes completely Islamic, when the Shias and Sunnis are still going to be trying to kill each other off? Let's try to find some means, something higher to unite through, rather than these particular, differences of religion. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. I remember a number of years ago, there was an email that was going around that said, when there was all the strife going on in the Middle East, that, they should send all the born-again Christians to the Middle East and they could just duke it out with the fundamentalist Muslims.
No.
And I thought that was kind of a eloquent solution to the problem. Because they're the ones that have the issue. I don't have an issue with them.
Yeah, exactly. Where there's an old joke that it's very simple. It goes that God gave us spirituality, but the devil came along and organized it and called it religion. So maybe that's part of the effect that we're experiencing, is this organized religion, which should never have been organized the way we see it today.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree. When I think of Hindu tradition, I think of the Vedas. And when you read the Vedas, not that I've read all of them because there's a lot, It seems like those texts are filled with ritual and prayer. What's the purpose of ritual and prayer in our lives or in the lives of the people that are following that tradition?
Well, ritual is basically an outward form of meditation. We have an inward form of meditation, which is usually for the more, intellectually inclined. You might put it that way. And then you have those that are more action-oriented, where they prefer to do something, some activity. And so the ritual, there's so many different rituals that are all based on particular principles and purposes. But it's ultimately to get ourselves to, once again, meditate on a primary focus of the divine or the supreme being. And so whether it's a ritual of, I don't want to use language or words that people don't understand, but whether you're performing an arati ceremony where you're offering a ghee lamp to the deity, or whether you're bathing the deity in different substances like milk or water or whatever, this is all different outward means of meditation, but it's still the focus and the purpose is the same thing. So that's what...
Bathing the deity in milk?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's an old tradition. Bathing the deities, whether it's Krishna, whether it's Shiva, whatever, you bathe the deity in different substances because milk, ghee, yogurt, honey, these are all considered very favorable substances. And so those substances are also used in different rituals, or just, simply offering incense. That also is part of it. So the purpose is the same, except the pathway may be a little bit different, or those utilizations are a little bit different. So there's what the Vedic principle is, that there's something for everybody. And you might have also dance, artwork, so many different outward forms of expression that are still a type of meditation on the divine. I know when I was in, Manipur. Manipur is known to have a dance which celebrates and imitates the Rasa Leela dancing of Krishna and his followers. And when I saw that, I hadn't seen it before, and when I saw that for the first time, I tell you, the dance itself was so beautiful and so divine, it almost created this whole atmosphere in the auditorium that lifted your consciousness up to the transcendental or spiritual dimension. It was just fantastic. Everybody was just blown away by it, simply by the way they did the dancing, all centered around Krishna, and it was gorgeous. So there's so many different ways to bring in that spiritual dimension. And the Vedic culture, Hinduism, is meant to do that by so many different ways, depending on the interest of the individual. So
well, I know. I mean, even down to, one thing that I've learned about this past year, I'll say, is even the concept of mudras, which I had no knowledge of, again, till this past year, and how, the positioning of the hand and the gesturing of the hand not only has meaning, to representation, but also carries an energy of itself and can, provide healing or shift your internal energy and do all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many different aspects of this that you can learn, and not only just learn it, but actually apply it to your life that can make a difference. Or like Vastu. Vastu is the like Feng Shui. It's the art of organizing your home and the items in it so that the energy flows in a particular way to enhance your consciousness as much as possible, enhance your living, your health, everything else. And then, of course, Ayurveda is the same way, that it's meant to teach you how to live, what to eat, what not to eat, so that the energy that travels through your body travels in a way where it's not obstructed by anything negative, And this also helps you, not only lead a nice, peaceful life without any health difficulties, but it also helps you raise your consciousness, develop your consciousness to a more sophisticated platform. So basically, that's what it's all about. It's how to raise our consciousness and through so many different avenues. And you can kind of pick out which avenue that you like the best.
So in India, I mean, since you've been there so many times, I think we're all familiar of, that there are individuals that are spiritual teachers. And I would assume that they have this wonderful energy and, are, in their Zen all the time, even though that's Buddhist. But anyway, what about the rest of the people? I mean, do you really find a mix of people in India? Do you find that people that live there tend to live a more spiritual life than we would traditionally do in the West? Do you understand where I'm going?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a big variety of people. In the older days, let's face it, I think, normally speaking, there were more people that were spiritually oriented and certainly had a higher knowledge of spirituality than what you would find in the West. The problem is now is that the present generations are, idolizing the West so much that they're giving up their own traditions and simply getting caught up in whatever modern technology there is, whatever Western habits there are. So you have a smaller range of people that are truly spiritually oriented than there used to be. And this is part of the problem. There was one story that there was one wealthy girl in Delhi, and she was spiritually oriented, but she was saving her money so that she could find the best yoga teacher possible in California. Not realizing that, basically, how do you think yoga came to California anyway? It didn't just pop up there. It came from India. So she's there and she's overlooking the fact that she could probably find some of the best yoga teachers available right in her own backyard. So this is kind of the thing, is that people are beginning to forget that India was the contributor of so many different levels of advancement. And now they're simply looking towards Western technology, Western values, Western habits, as opposed to simply looking at, what India had to offer. This doesn't mean that everybody's like that, but it is a growing trend that I've seen, and it's, in many ways quite disappointing.
Well, and I think, being an American and not really being exposed to what's out there in other cultures, you don't realize, what the difference is, what the separation is, where they look at us and they're like, oh, they have all this stuff. But I could see in the same viewpoint, I at least for me, that it would be humbling, I think, to be in some of these other cultures, to be around their ancient knowledge and wisdom and tradition that is totally lost here.
Oh, yeah, I find that a lot where, the kids in India sometimes, they don't even know they're poor. They're just playing and having a good time and going about their business and stuff like that. And sometimes I've seen where, you might have some sadhu, some greatly wise old holy men, and they can look at Westerners and they can realize that, actually they may be rich economically, but culturally and spiritually, they're very poor. And they can recognize that. And oftentimes, again, too, even when I'm there and I'm dealing with Westerners in India, sometimes I can hear them talk about how they don't understand what's going on here, or why are they doing this, and they just criticize it without even looking into the purpose of whatever's taking place, whatever they're witnessing. So they're a typical Western tourist, and they're not really interested in understanding the culture that they're visiting. They just go there and
take
criticize
pictures.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Stephen,
right.
we need to go to a break. Okay?
All
But
right.
when we come back, I'd like to hear how you kind of fit in being a Westerner in the Eastern world. Sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Stephen Knapp. His webpage is www.stephenknapp.info or stephen-knapp.com. He has a million books. I just suggest you go to his website, check him out, buy him on Amazon, and we'll be back with Stephen after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN Chat Lounge, the Game Lounge, Video Lounge, or the Mood Lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment
with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the Live Request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where if you're looking to become an energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or medical intuitive, this is the place to go. And actually, that website is undergoing a major rehaul, and so it will be re-released or reissued in the next, I'm hoping, few weeks. I don't know. You think it's only going to take you a day, but that never happens. Anyway, but that's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Please do check out our webpage, justenergyradio.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Check out the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. We're going to continue with our interview with Stephen Knapp. His webpage is stephenknapp.info or stephen-knapp.com. So, Stephen, before we went to the break, we were talking about Westerners in Indian culture, you know, Westerners going to India and just not really fitting in. How do you navigate that? I mean, because obviously you're a Westerner, but are you accepted by that culture? And do they see you as being, you know, I'm going to say kind of a spiritual guy? I mean, how do you fit?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It depends on the group of people that I'm with. I mean, some people know my background. Some people already respect it and stuff. But quite honestly, I also like going into towns and villages where I'm just alone and I just wander around and I just watch and see how things are going and stuff like that without anybody watching. I mean, understanding who I am. And I like that a lot. And I can see, I have an understanding of what's happening and I observe it. And I mean, sometimes people come up to me and they think that I don't know anything about their culture. But then when we begin talking about it, they're usually quite surprised. And so it's interesting in that way. But yeah, it's I know for myself, when I go there, I'm quite familiar with it. And many times when Indians do find out that I'm familiar with it or I'm interested, they also become impressed. They become, or especially when I'm doing lecture tours, that's another thing, where people become quite surprised that I know so much about it or I'm so familiar with it. I'm so supportive of it. And because sometimes they come to hear me speak because they want to know what a Westerner has to say, as if it's a novelty, kind of a novelty to hear what, you know, some outsider, you might say, has to say about it. But other times they give you so much respect. It's almost like, I should live over there or something, you know. But so I've seen it both ways. I can see it from the point of view where they know that I understand it, and sometimes they don't know. But for me, I pretty much have a pretty good grasp of, you know, what the philosophy is about, what the traditions are about, and what the festivals are about. So I don't have that problem so much. But granted, it's taken a while of study and familiarizing myself with it to really reach that point. And I know sometimes I run into other Westerners that are also very familiar with it, and other Westerners that are just like, They don't know, they don't care, or they don't know, but they want to know. So that's always interesting and very nice to come across. So I like that.
So I'm just being a little bit nosy, but you were talking about ritual being a form of meditation. And so would you share with the listeners kind of what your spiritual practice is, the kinds of things that you do?
Well, when I get up in the morning, of course, I clean myself, everything, because then after that, I have my own little temple room in my house. And I usually do my own spiritual practice in my temple room, which I have my own few deities. I have deities of Krishna and Radha Govinda and even Ganesh and Shiva. And so I do my own little puja or worship to my deities. And then after that, and that also means I offer some incense and a few other items. And then I have particular mantras that I chant for getting their blessings for the day. Then I usually engage in some japa meditation, which is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And then after that, I go about my business, which is usually whether it's checking my emails or starting to work on my books or something like that. Or if I don't do it here at home, then I'm only like a couple blocks away from the local Krishna temple. And so I go there. And there they have a morning program which lasts a few hours. And they also have big, gorgeous deities of Radha Krishna, Radha Govinda, and other deities. And so I'll watch the arti ceremony and the puja and worship there. Of course, that happens a few times a day, several times actually. So if I don't do it in the morning, maybe I'll go in the evening and do the same thing in the evening. And or if I'm not reading one of my books or writing one of my books or something like that, sometimes I'm doing research, or sometimes I'm just reading some of the other Vedic texts that I have. And I have a fairly extensive library. And Lord knows I've got enough books waiting for my attention. I'm just trying to get to them all. And I'll just sit down and start reading some of the other books that I've got and studying those and getting ideas for other books to write or something like that. Or sometimes I'll be writing an article, or this week I had the idea of putting together a few YouTube lectures. I don't try to make them too long or anything, maybe 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And so I just put up some of those on my YouTube channel.
Is it Stephen Knapp on YouTube?
Yeah, just Stephen Knapp on YouTube. And I put up, what did I put up? I put up a YouTube lecture on the importance of the Bhagavad Gita in this day and age. Another one called Why Understand Spirituality. And so I don't try to get too technical or too specific. I try to, put out information that's more general and where everybody can get something out of it, that kind of thing.
But see, I think that's interesting that you don't spend large chunks of time per se in meditation, and you don't have this whole yogic practice, and you know what I mean? Because I think when people hear of people having a spiritual practice, they think, that they're in it, and actively doing stuff with it 24/7. Let me ask one little question before you respond. I'm assuming a vegetarian?
Yep. Yeah, I've been a vegetarian since 1972.
Okay, just curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes with chanting japa, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, that can go on for a couple hours. So sometimes it can last a while. And sometimes I also do deep meditation. I may not do it each and every day, but sometimes I've done deep meditation. And I quite honestly, I like to do my deep meditation in the evening, in the dark, where you have as little sensual stimulus as possible. And so you can go as deep as possible that way. And because that's the whole idea of deep meditation, is to get beyond the dictates of the mind And the breathing is one of the last, say, distractions you have to kind of conquer or go beyond even your breathing so that you can get beyond the idea that you're even in the body. And, of course, we're talking about deep meditation here. And I like that as well because sometimes you can go so deep and you don't even know how much time you're spending at it. Sometimes an hour will go by and it seems like you've just been gone for, 5 minutes or something. And sometimes you can go so deep that you forget. You cannot even relate to whether you're male or female. It has practically no consequence of what your spiritual identity is when you go that deep into meditation like that. In fact, one time I went so deep into the meditation that when I came out of it, I was talking to my ex-wife about something, and she had just gone to Puerto Rico and met this guy that had a near-death experience. And his near-death experience was the same as the experience I had in deep meditation. When you come out of it, it's like the world is never the same. You just look at it completely differently. But that becomes part of your reality then. You take that with you wherever you go. So there's many different aspects of, doing spiritual life and spiritual practices. And these are some of the ones that I've done most. But I can say I'll probably get deeper into it as I get older because I'll probably start slowing down on my writing. And,
So when you go into the deep meditations, I'm going to assume just from my own meditative practice, you end up feeling and experiencing that oneness with the universe, that connection to God, kind of a separation from the physical world.
Exactly. You even forget about the fear of death, for example, or even being concerned about it, because you begin to see that, whether you're in the body or out of the body, and sometimes when you're in deep meditation, you might as well be out of the body because you're no longer conscious of it. You realize that, life is going to go on no matter what. So what is there to worry about?
Paying the utility bill. No.
Oh, yeah. You got to come back and then deal with different levels of reality like that. That's for sure. That's what we're stuck with here in this material world anyway, for right now, at least this particular time of our existence. Hopefully we'll come out with some free energy at some point. Maybe Tesla had something that we can begin to use if people don't try to monopolize it or keep it under a wrap so people can't use it.
Well, but it seems like that's been the case, but that's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, or what I see for you might be the $1 million question. I wanted to save it for the second half of the show. When you read a lot of these ancient texts, they talk about gods flying around in vimanas, and they're conversing with giant birds, and there are giants running around all over the place. Do you think that these gods were extraterrestrial?
Oh yeah, some of them are. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They don't live on this planet. Simple as that. To answer your question simply, yeah, because even say like the 5th canto of the Bhagavad Purana, it explains how yogis were able to leave their body and investigate different levels of reality and even different planets. And it describes some of the things that they found. But the thing of it is, you have to remember that some of these planets, life goes on there in the subtle realm. So even if we look at these planets with, telescopes or, satellites or whatever, we're not going to really see what's there. And that's the difference. And so that's one of the problems I've had with the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, because it describes the cosmology of the universe. But it changes from speaking of one dimension to another. And I can't always figure out, this is just one of my weaknesses, I guess, but I can't always figure out when it's talking about, say, a 3-dimensional realm as opposed to maybe all of a sudden it's talking about a fourth dimensional realm. But these are some of the visions of the seers that put this information together. So it's interesting. Yeah, some of these gods and goddesses are definitely from a different dimension and different realm of reality.
But just the fact that they, quote unquote, live on planets makes them not be the omnipotent creator of the world that is the everything, because they have to live somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, so there's different levels. I mean, there is a hierarchy, you might say, and different echelons of potencies within the higher beings. There's no question of that.
Well, let me ask it in a different way. In Hindu tradition, do they see these beings as being gods in the same way we see God in like Christianity or Judaism?
Yeah, there's different schools of thought. There's the Dvaita or dualistic school, which feels that the different gods are different personalities. And there's the Advaita or non-dual school of thought, which feels that all of these gods are simply different aspects of the one supreme being. And in some ways, I feel they're both right. They're different aspects of the one supreme being, naturally, because we're basically all sons and daughters of God. But they also have their own functions. They also have their own purposes. So each divinity has their own reason for being here and different, like I said, functions that they perform. And that's another thing I wrote about in my book, Avatars, Gods, and Goddesses of the Vedic Tradition, where I described all the main gods and goddesses and what their personalities are, what their functions are, what some of the legends and stories that are connected with them, to see how they all have different purposes and stuff. But, it also depends on the school of thought. So that's one of the things also that within Hinduism and Vedic culture is that there is room for different points of view. Sometimes they don't always agree, but, I feel that it's definitely worth consideration no matter what school of thought you're associated with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's so much other material, that just seems to be a kind of minor sticking point and shouldn't take away from the experience, because it seems like that tradition, there's a lot of experiential material, not just a book that you should read.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I feel the same way. From considering all the Vedic literature, from the original Samhitas, which is the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, up through the Brahmanas, the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras, up to the Itihasas or the histories like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which includes the Bhagavad Gita, up to the Puranas. It's a continual development of understanding all the different aspects of the absolute truth or God. And so you have all these different, venues and views. And some are more ritualistic, as you were pointing out earlier in the conversation, and some are more philosophical and not so ritualistic. So, like I said, it all depends on what level of understanding you want to reach and what aspect of the Vedic culture you want to participate in.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask kind of a devil's advocate question. But if these gods, or some of these gods, or whatever, are ETs, then why worship them?
Basically, you worship them for their blessings and their abilities, because just like Ganesh is the god that takes away obstacles, boundaries, gives you good luck for starting projects and things like that. And so especially students, for example, will worship Ganesh to, give them maybe higher levels of concentration and being able to tap into the knowledge that they've acquired to do better on tests and things like that. So, like I say, each one has different purposes, so you worship them for the blessings and the abilities that particular god or a deity will be able to give you for those purposes, whatever it is that you may need. And so also that's why some people have their Ishta Devata, which is their favorite god, because they have certain things they want to accomplish in life, and that divinity, that deity, will give you those blessings to be able to do that more carefully or successfully. And of course, the highest level of worship of all is to, once again, attain love of God and be able to be free from this body once you die, as opposed to simply try to perfect whatever materialistic activities you're trying to do. But you can find it all. You can find it all in the Vedic tradition like this.
And so is it kind of like setting an intention, like worshiping one of these guys, kind of like setting an intention? Or is it more like, what you find in like voodoo culture, where they will have certain saints or individuals that they will call upon so that they can feel and experience their vibration?
Well, a little both, but the thing of it is, it's like you said, intention. In Sanskrit, it's called sankalpa. Intention is called sankalpa, and you definitely have to have the sankalpa as part of the ritual and part of the prayer, so that your intention is focused on the right wavelength, and you can, definitely tune into that particular deity, that divinity that you're trying to get the blessings from, so that you can accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish as successfully as possible. But intention is certainly part of it, but you can also pray to them in a way where you begin to feel their presence. And one time, my own spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, once asked the devotees, he says, okay, so how do you know Krishna is God? And the devotees were saying, well, because, he says so in Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada said, no, that's not the answer. Well, because other Shastra says that, he's the Supreme Being or something like that. And he said, no, that's not the answer. The answer is how you know that this God can help you, or this is God, is because of the reciprocation. It is when you pray for him, when you devote yourself to him, he begins to reciprocate with you. You begin to see the blessings. You begin to feel his presence. He begins to interact with you. So this is the deeper, also the part of the deeper level of devotional meditation. But it takes some serious sankalpa, or intention, to reach that level. You have to be serious about it.
Well, and I don't think that people really understand the importance of intention in ritual, in, working on deeper level. I mean, I'm an energy girl, so I totally get intention, but to venture into that realm, they think that, I always make the joke, if I burn a little sage and whoosh it around my room, it's going to get rid of the evil spirits or the ghosts or whatever that might be in the space. And it's like, well, you can do it, but, if you're just like whooshing it around, it doesn't mean it's going to do anything.
Right, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. Even in ordinary life, oftentimes people don't know the power of deep intention, because that itself can accomplish many things. We just need to explore that a little more carefully. And, it's the power of the mind itself can do many great things. And, if you're on the wrong track about something or confused about something, it can do many nonsense or evil things as well. So you have to have the right intention, keep it on the right level. And like you said, you swish the sage around. But if your intention is still on focusing on the evil spirits, that sage isn't going to be that effective.
Isn't or is?
Is not going to be that effective if your intention is still focusing on whatever evil spirits you're trying to get rid of.
Well, but if the intention is to help them take their next step, then that's good.
Yeah, but usually those are more positive spirits. You have the positive and also negative spirits. And if you're looking for someone to help you take your next step, then obviously that's someone who can give you some benefit. And,
No. Help them take their next step, like out of your living room.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have a question from the chat room. It's from Redshift. And so the question is, if the Indian ritual and religion are successful and effective for individuals, then why is there so much abject poverty and struggling to eke out a living on a daily basis?
Well, the one thing I found by traveling around India is not the culture is the problem, but it's the distancing of it and the forgetfulness of it, and not following it or taking it seriously. And that's what I've found to be, one of the biggest problems. And the other thing, too, is let's remember the history of India. The history of India has been one of invaders for the past 1,000 years, whether it's the Arabic, Middle Eastern invaders, the Muslim invaders, or whether it was the British Raj or the Portuguese. They were all, working to subjugate India for their own benefits for many, many years. And it's only recently that India is finally, let's face it, India was only achieved independence in 1947. And they've made great strides, but they still have a lot of work to do. So in that regard, there's still a lot of poverty and there's still a lot of education that has to be overcome and provided for people at the same time in order to help everybody reach even a better materialistic level, what to speak of spiritual level.
Speaking of history, one of the things that keeps popping up when you study the history and culture of India is the Dravidians. Who are the Dravidians and what is their relationship to Hindu culture?
Well, the Dravidians were just those that were in the southern part of India. That's what it's been accepted as. And they're usually the darker races, where the Aryans were those of the northern area. But actually, genetically speaking, they've done tests, and they found that basically there is no difference between the Aryan and the Dravidians, and that the idea that the Dravidians were a separate race of people has been promoted by those that have been trying to create some divisions within the Indian population itself. And so it's become a kind of a political thing, where some people are still promoting the idea that the Dravidians are separate only because those people have something to gain by promoting that idea. Whereas Dravidians being a different race of people, it was just a different name on those people of a particular locality, that's all. So this has only come about in the past 10, 20 years or so that these genetic tests have been done, and we can see that there is no differentiation between, genetically at least, from the people of the South from the people of the North.
But doesn't the culture and history go back further, or there is kind of a separation of culture and history with that population?
I haven't seen it. The only thing is in the South, they're more Shiva worshippers. They worship Shiva more than they do in the North, but they also worship Vishnu. And where in the North, there is a little bit more emphasis on Vishnu and Krishna as opposed to some of the other deities. Otherwise, each area of India has its own culture in some way. Like Rajasthan is different from West Bengal, which is different from, Tamil Nadu, which is different from, Madhya Pradesh. They all have a little bit different language, style, culture, and even diet. It can, and that was the thing about early India. They were all a mass of princely states. It was not a complete country. And so sometimes I say that by getting one passport to India, I can visit so many different cultures within the same country.
Because it's just so different.
Yeah, which is fun. I mean, I like it,
Okay. So, you're talking about the Aryans, and one of the other things that I've read about was this whole Aryan invasion. Mm-hmm. And so is that, do you think that a lot of the culture that came into or that's in India actually came from Europe?
No. No, the whole Aryan invasion theory came from Max Muller. And that was because he was estimating, actually based on a mistranslation of a few verses in the Rig Veda, he was estimating that the Aryans came in to India about 1500 BC. The problem with that is, and then they wrote the Rig Veda, about 1500 BC. But then later he admitted that he had no idea whether the invasion might have happened in 1500, 1000, or even 500 BC. He had no idea. And later he admitted that his theory was, based on, quite honestly, his own speculations about things. But the problem is that when you talk about the Aryan invasions, they wrote the Rig Veda. They were supposed to have written the Rig Veda about 1500 BC, but they were still greatly describing the Indus River, the Sarasvati River, which is known to have dried up by 2000 BC. So how are they writing in 1500 BC about a river that dried up 500 or 1,000 years before? It doesn't make any sense, because within the Rig Veda, it talks about the Sarasvati River being sometimes as much as several miles across. And so if it dried up in 2000 BC, it must have been existing in even 5,000, 6,000, or even 7,000 BC. So we begin to understand, this is just one of the arguments, but we begin to understand that this whole Aryan invasion thing is an invasion that never took place. And even nowadays, you can go on my website, actually, and there's the
StephenKnapp.info.
Yeah, there's an article on there that explains how, the Aryan invasion, the last nail in its coffin, which gives the evidence how the Aryan invasion was simply a theory that came out from Max Muller, was accepted by scholars at the time, especially the British and German Sanskritists, only to try once again to divide the country so that they could more easily rule it. And later it was shown, and it's still shown with even increasing amounts of evidence today, that this whole theory was just a bunch of poppycock, and it's like a house of cards which is gradually falling apart. There's no real evidence that the Vedic culture came from anywhere than the Gangetic Plains and the area of Pakistan and northern India. So it's created a lot of confusion. That's one thing that's done. But that was one of its purposes as well, is to create a lot of confusion as to what the real history of India and the Vedic culture really is. So it's taken a lot of work for some of us to try to correct that history. And I've done my part, but there's been others like David Frawley, N.S. Rajaram, and others that have done far more work than I have in that regard.
Well, and the reason I ask that, or I get even curious about that, is when you read Norse mythology, there are a lot of stories that kind of parallel the cosmology that you find in India, more so than you would think that there would be a closer tie to Greek and Roman mythology that you would find in Germany and Switzerland and those countries, but there's actually a closer tie to Indian.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one thing I've found out, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote a book called Proof of Vedic Culture's Global Existence. And that is, the more you look around, the more you're educated to recognize Vedic culture, the more you can begin to see it in other cultures, so that you can begin to see that there was a great expansion, there was a great outgrowth from India to other areas of the world that brought their culture with them, that spread their own traditions and things like that, which gradually took up, just like the Norse scriptures called Eddas, which is very much like Vedas. And the gods and goddesses are known by Freya, and others, which have similar functions as the Vedic gods, even though they're known by different names. So it's kind of like the names have been changed, but the identity actually and the functions are still the same. So, and that's just in the Norse area. Then you have other areas like South America and things like that, where many of the traditions are also quite similar, where you've even found sculptures of Ganesh in different areas of Central America, and they don't even have elephants down there. So how did you get this elephant god of Ganesh carved on stones in Central America? There had to have been an outgrowth from India to get there. And even some of the languages in South America are very similar to Tamil, the Tamil language, which is in South India. So you begin to question, how did this happen unless there was not some kind of connection? So
do you think it was a human connection? Do you think that there might be, I'm going to use this word, an ET connection, that was transmitting similar information to both cultures at the same time?
I think in this regard it was more of a human connection, because the Indian culture, the old Indian and Vedic culture, has many references to a maritime culture where they used to sail the oceans guided by the stars above. So they were known to have gone to many different areas of the planet through sailing over the oceans. In fact, when the British first came to India, they could not imagine how perfect and expert their shipbuilding of India was compared to their own. They would build, the Indians would build ships out of teak and would be 3 times bigger than the British ships and would last 3 times longer without maintenance than the British ships could maintain themselves. So the maritime history of India is also quite extensive. And that's also how many of the aspects of Vedic culture went from, India into Cambodia through South Asia to Singapore, and even on crossing the oceans to South America.
Well, I find that really interesting. I'm going to have to put that into my little cap and see what I think. I see the parallels with the Norse immediately. And I'm going to have to kind of look around to some of these other ones. You were talking about how India has been an invaded country for years. What was going on? Any history about what was going on that left them susceptible to invading forces? I know that Alexander the Great made it to India, or almost made it to India. But was repelled. But what was going on in India that allowed these outside forces to just basically come in and take over?
Well, at first, when the outside forces, mainly the Yavanas, or the Middle Eastern people, the Muslims, when they first came, they were repelled. But then they regrouped and got bigger forces and came back to India. And the problem was that India was not a united country, but a series of many princely states. So when one state was being attacked, the other states around it kind of felt, well, as long as I'm not being attacked, then I don't have to worry too much about it. But if they had simply united, they could have easily repelled these forces and, kicked their butt, more or less. But because one kingdom was separate from another, then one by one, these invaders started to take over. And at first they weren't, the invader military were not interested in settling in India. They were just making robbery attacks. They would come in, raid the villages, raid the temples, take the gold and valuables from the kingdoms and run back. But then they started to come into India and actually begin to settle down. And that's where the problems really began. So that, it's not just the invaders were coming in, but they were staying there, they were taking over, and the Indians had never seen anything like it, because some of these invaders, they would just slaughter hundreds, thousands of Hindus at a time, until they would make basically piles of their heads, their chopped off heads, and rivers of blood. So it just kind of like it was a shock factor that the Indians had to deal with. And even though the Indians did, some of them did provide very, very good military attacks, still they were overcome because of this lack of unity, at least to begin with. And then after a while, it was just, too much. And they couldn't get couldn't dominate the situation like they had before. And so once that happened, it kept a whole series of events for the past 1,000 years until they gained independence finally in 1947, where this was a big factor in how they were controlled and dominated by outside forces. I've written a lot about that in my book, Crimes Against India and the Need to Protect Its Ancient Vedic Tradition. So if you really want to read about that kind of history of India, you get into that book, and that'll explain a lot of the things that of the history of India that people are already starting to forget.
Well, and I think that's interesting. I didn't realize that the conquests there had gone back so far in time. I mean, I know the British were there.
Right.
And so my belief was that we're really only talking about a few hundred years of conquest, but 1,000 years, it's surprising that their culture is held up as well as it has.
Yeah, it is. Many people also say that. But one thing about it is that it's the flexibility of the culture, and also the people, regardless. I mean, common people over the years have given their lives so that today we still have the freedom to practice this culture today, at least for India. But even the way things are going in India now, the politics of it, all this, practically speaking, in many ways, we have more freedom to practice this deep level of spirituality and Hinduism and Vedic culture here in America than they do in India. Of course, that would require some explanation, but I can guarantee you the way things are going with the non-Hindu politics and the Congress Party of India, they have made things very difficult for people to continue their traditions in Vedic culture while they give more preference to the minorities, such as Christians and Muslims, to carry on with their tradition. And they're less taxed, they can form their own schools and things like that, where, things are not so easy. The governments have been taking over Hindu temples for a long time. And
and stop right there, because I have a question, because I heard about this. Actually, I was watching Ancient Aliens the other day. I will admit that. And they were talking about amazing antiquities that were recovered from, and I'm going to say this extremely phonetically, but I hope don't laugh, from Sri Padmana Baswami Temple.
Oh, yeah.
And so do you know anything about that? Because I saw about that on, the show, and I started digging into it to find out, one, what they found, two, why they went in there, which I thought was kind of sacrilegious. And then apparently there's a whole bunch of politics going on around it.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I mean, the temple property is the temple property. They found all this gold and artifacts and everything, and now all of a sudden the state government says, oh, you owe it to the state. I mean, wait a minute. How did the temple get all these artifacts? How did they get all that property and valuables? It's because the people gave it to the temple in honor of the deity for so many years. So now we say, oh, because we found it, now the temple can't even have its own property. Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing is going on, which basically adds to the slow destruction of the culture itself and the possibility of simply following it with full freedom. So that's just another aspect of what's going on over there.
But do you have any idea of what they have found in this temple? I mean, they said that there were ancient artifacts discovered. But, of course, I mean, my feeling is that we're really not ever going to hear about that. But have you heard anything?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of gold artifacts, whether it was helmets, jewelry, swords, all kinds of things like this that were basically the property of the deities. And so the idea now is that if they found all this, which is extremely valuable, and then there must be other temples also with vaults underneath the ground or something that's containing valuables as well. So now they want to start, or the premise was at the time, they wanted to start looking into all these other temples to see what other valuables that they might find that they don't know of right now. Because that vault was there for some time at that temple, but nobody, was allowed to look into it. And somehow somebody opened it up and bingo, man, jackpot. I got all this stuff there that, was obviously things that once belonged to the deity, which means the gold necklaces and helmets and things, crowns and stuff, was once worn and kept for worshiping the deity like that. So...
So any thoughts on the fifth chamber that they haven't been able to get into? What possibly might be in there? I mean, it kind of scares me that, it sounds like, and I know how we are in this world, that they're just going to break the door down.
Yeah, well, that's probably what they'll do eventually. I mean, I don't know.
And that just really kind of scares me because it was sealed up for a reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, actually. They wanted to keep it sacred, and now, amongst some politicians and groups of people, that sacredness is becoming lost. So, hey, what the hell? Let's break it down and see what's in there and take it for ourselves. So,
and then not share it with the rest of the world either.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's so it is kind of depressing like that. So things are becoming lost. The sacredness is becoming lost. The wisdom is also starting to become lost. And that's why you have, people like me that's trying to share this wisdom through my books and stuff as much as possible so that we can, allow everyone to take advantage of it as much as we can while the freedom is still there and while the knowledge is still floating around.
Do you think that... when this life is done and you have the opportunity to come back, that you're going to come back during the Kali Yuga again?
Quite honestly, ever since I was 7 years old, I've never liked this material world that much. And my whole idea was to somehow or another make sure I get out and don't have to come back. And that was long before I knew anything about reincarnation or karma or anything like that. So obviously, somehow, I had been working on this from a previous life. And I'm just taking up where I left off from a previous existence. In fact, many of the readers, the psychics and stuff, they all say the same thing, that I was a, Indian Hindu in my previous life. And I'm just, just taking up where I, left off. But my hope is that, yes, the way things are going. In fact, I just I spoke to a friend of mine not too long ago. He was also born in the same year I was, 1950. And I says, the way things are going, we came into this world at the right time when there was all this social change and the Beatles and music and all these things that were going on. And now it's completely different. And I says, we came into this world at the right time and we're leaving at the right time as well. But yeah, once I leave, quite honestly, I hope I don't have to come back. I hope I can enter into the spiritual dimension and continue with my existence in that realm as opposed to coming back down to this earthly realm.
Well, I thought we had a choice, and, maybe you could just take a little vacation.
Well, that's my choice.
But I think, there are people that talk about old souls and, young souls or new souls to this planet. And that's why everything is just changing so much, because they don't have the life experience on this planet. And I get the feeling, just from talking to a lot of my friends, that the people that really are the old souls are tired and they're ready to go, and and they don't really want to come back.
Well, I can really relate to that. I can tell you right now. Yeah, I don't blame him at all. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, let the new souls come in, the young souls come in and do whatever they can, because quite honestly, I've, my work isn't over, I can tell you that much, but I'm just trying to get as much done as possible so that in the next 20 years I can, leave in good consciousness and good faith that somebody else can take advantage of whatever I've done, and I can move on out of here.
Well, maybe you can come back on a different planet. I mean, there's not anything that says that you have to come back here.
That's true. Yeah, definitely, at least on a different planet. Because I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the way I see things after being here for 60 years, the way I see things, in another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm kind of worried. I'm worried about what the shape of things are going to be.
Well, and it just gets a little bit scarier with this whole, now there's no water thing. And
Yeah, definitely. Or the weather. I mean, the weather here up in Detroit, where I'm located, and the whole Northeast, we've been hammered. This has been one hell of a winter. It's like, God, how many times do I have to go through this? I hope we don't have to go through this very often. I hope this is just an odd winter, comparatively speaking, because this has been difficult. It hasn't been too easy. So, and I don't have to even deal with it that much. I just stay home and write. I don't have to go out in it that much. It's not like I'm going to work every day. But, enough is enough after a while.
That long commute. I love the long commute. Oh, I have to walk upstairs. Oh.
Yeah, that takes a lot out of you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then it's like, well, it's 11. I guess I should maybe jump in the shower. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good.
Right. Well, then you don't have too much to complain about. But.
No. Stephen, what do you have coming up? We have 2 minutes before the music's going to be rolling.
Well, we got our tour in Angkor Wat that's coming up. Hopefully we can have a good time studying the Vedic culture in Cambodia and look at that. And I'm also putting together a book right now called The Essential Teachings of Lord Krishna. And that should be available on Amazon in another month or two, probably 2 months maybe. And in the meantime, like I say, we've got 25 books available on the different aspects of Vedic culture that people can see on Amazon now, and a number of YouTubes and like 200 articles practically, and some free ebooks on my website as well that people can take advantage of. And I try to make as much information as possible, as freely as possible. Of course, you can't give the books away. They're a little expensive, but you can get them both in paperback or Kindle, which definitely, makes it more affordable. So that's what I've been working on, and hopefully I'll keep doing that for some time.
Well, I'm glad that you do what you do, because you're just a great soul, and I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show and just chatting.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great. I liked it very much. So definitely nice chatting with you, and good luck with everything you're doing as well. And hopefully we'll chat again sometime.
I think we just will have to.
Have a good time
write
doing
a couple more books, and we'll come on and we can talk about those books in particular.
Yeah.
Promote them. That's always, I like doing that.
Oh yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Well, okay. Well, then I'm going to let you go because I know the music is coming up, and I will talk to you soon. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Thank you. That's Stephen Knapp. His webpage is stephenknapp.info or stephen-knapp.com. Check out his 25 books and the ebooks and the articles and everything on his webpage. And then next week, we're going to be speaking with Robert Bruval about the Vatican heresy. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.